April 14, 1943. Pacific Fleet Headquarters, Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. Commander Edwin Layton placed the decoded message on Admiral Chester Nimitz's desk with hands that trembled slightly, despite his best efforts to remain composed. This cannot be real. Intelligence this specific never falls into our hands. The message contained everything. Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto, architect of Pearl Harbor, commander of the combined fleet, Japan's most brilliant naval strategist, his complete inspection itinerary for April 18th. Departure time from Rabaul, 0600 hours. Arrival at Ballet Airfield, Bougainville, 0945 hours. Aircraft types, 2 Mitsubishi G4M Betty bombers. Escort, 6 Mitsubishi ASM-0 fighters. Even the return schedule. Nimitz read it twice. Then he looked up at Layton, his intelligence officer, the man who had predicted the Japanese attack on Midway with such precision that it had changed the war. "What do you say?" Nimitz asked quietly. "Do we try and get him?" The question hung in the air. American cryptologists at Station Hypo had been reading Japanese naval codes for months, but this was different. This wasn't fleet movements or supply schedules. This was the location and timing of Japan's most valuable military leader, delivered with such precision it seemed like a gift, or a trap. But Layton knew the intercept was genuine. The message had been transmitted on April 13th using the JN-25 naval code that Station Hypo had been exploiting since before Midway. It was addressed to multiple commands in the Solomon Islands, detailing Yamamoto's tour schedule with the mundane specificity of routine military traffic. The Japanese had no idea their codes were compromised. The implications staggered Layton. Yamamoto wasn't just another admiral. He had planned Pearl Harbor. He understood American industrial potential better than any Japanese leader. He had studied at Harvard, served as naval attaché in Washington, traveled across America in the 1920s. He had warned his own government that Japan could run wild for 6 to 12 months, but had no expectation of success in a prolonged war with the United States. And he had been right. After Midway, after Guadalcanal, the tide was turning. But with Yamamoto still commanding the combined fleet, Japan's naval operations retained strategic coherence that might otherwise collapse. Killing him would require something extraordinary. A fighter with sufficient range to fly from Guadalcanal to Bougainville and back, 435 miles each way. That meant nearly 1,000 miles round trip, most of it over open ocean where any navigational error would be fatal. It meant flying so low that Japanese radar couldn't detect the approach. It meant arriving at precisely the right moment, within minutes of a predicted interception time, after hours of navigation with no landmarks. And it meant doing all this with a fighter that could also win a dogfight against Zeros. The United States had exactly one aircraft that could accomplish this mission: the Lockheed P-38 Lightning. The twin-boom, twin-engine fighter that German Luftwaffe pilots called Der Gabelschwanzteufel, the fork-tailed devil. The P-38 Lightning had entered combat in the Pacific Theater in November 1942, arriving at Henderson Field on Guadalcanal as part of the 339th Fighter Squadron. The aircraft was unlike anything Japanese pilots had encountered. The Lightning featured a unique twin-boom design. 2 Allison V-1710 engines mounted on separate booms extending back from the wings, with the pilot and armament in a central nacelle between them. This configuration gave the P-38 extraordinary capabilities. Maximum speed, 400 miles per hour at 25,000 feet. Rate of climb, 3,000 feet per minute. Service ceiling, 44,000 feet. But the specification that mattered most for the Pacific War was range. 1,150 miles with internal fuel, extendable to over 2,000 miles with external drop tanks. The central nacelle housed devastating concentrated firepower. 4 Browning M2 50 caliber machine guns with 200 rounds per gun, and 1 Hispano 20mm autocannon with 150 rounds. All weapons fired through the nose, meaning the P-38 had no convergence issues. The bullets went exactly where the pilot aimed from any range. This nose-mounted armament gave Lightning pilots a significant advantage in deflection shooting compared to wing-mounted guns on other fighters. The P-38G variant that equipped the 339th Fighter Squadron in early 1943 incorporated improved engines and strengthened airframe capable of carrying 300-gallon drop tanks, enough fuel capacity for the mission to Bougainville. On December 27, 1942, the P-38 scored their first significant victory in the Pacific. 8 Lightnings from the 339th Fighter Squadron encountered a formation of 12 Mitsubishi A6M-0 fighters over Cape Gloucester, New Britain. The engagement demonstrated what would become the Lightning's standard tactical advantage. The P-38 pilots used their superior speed and climb rate to control the engagement, diving on the Zeros from above, making firing passes, then using their twin-engine power to climb back to altitude before the lighter Japanese fighters could respond. The Americans shot down 4 Zeros without loss. Japanese pilots quickly developed a healthy respect for the Lightning. The aircraft's distinctive silhouette, twin booms and twin tails, made it instantly recognizable. Its performance envelope made it nearly impossible to catch. A Zero could outturn a P-38 in horizontal maneuvering, but the Lightning pilot simply avoided turn fighting. Instead, they exploited their speed advantage. Boom and zoom tactics, high-speed diving attacks, and the ability to disengage at will by outrunning pursuit. By early 1943, P-38s were destroying Japanese aircraft at a favorable rate across the Solomon Islands. On January 31, 1943, Lieutenant Robert Westbrook shot down 3 Zeros in a single engagement near Guadalcanal. On February 15, the 339th Fighter Squadron intercepted a Japanese bomber formation attacking Allied shipping, shooting down 7 bombers and 2 escort fighters. The Lightning's twin-engine configuration provided another critical advantage: survivability. If one engine was damaged, the pilot could often limp home on the remaining engine. In the vast distances of the Pacific, where emergency landing sites were non-existent and rescue unlikely, this redundancy saved lives. Single-engine fighters hit over open ocean simply went down. P-38s came home. But it was the Lightning's range that made Operation Vengeance possible. No other American fighter in the Pacific could fly 435 miles to a target, fight a battle, and return home. The P-38's twin engines burned more fuel than single-engine fighters, but carried much more. And with 300-gallon external drop tanks mounted under each wing, the Lightning could reach targets that were simply beyond the radius of any other Allied fighter in theater. When Commander Edwin Layton briefed Admiral Nimitz on the Yamamoto intercept on April 14th, the operational requirements were clear. The mission needed fighters that could fly 435 miles from Guadalcanal to Bougainville, arrive at a precise time, fight Japanese escorts, shoot down Yamamoto's transport, and return 435 miles home. Only the P-38 Lightning could do it. By April 1943, the P-38 Lightning had established itself as the premier American fighter in the Pacific theater. The pattern repeated across the Solomon Islands, New Guinea, and the Bismarck Archipelago. Japanese formations encountered by P-38s suffered disproportionate losses. They prowled the skies over Bougainville, where Lightning pilots from the 339th and 347th Fighter Squadrons destroyed Japanese bombers attacking Allied positions on Guadalcanal. On March 15th, 8 P-38s intercepted 18 Mitsubishi G4M Betty bombers escorted by 20 Zeros near Kahili Airfield. The Americans shot down 6 bombers and 3 fighters, losing 1 Lightning. They ranged over New Guinea, where the 9th Fighter Squadron's P-38s provided air superiority for Australian and American ground forces. On March 28th, Lightning pilots destroyed an entire Japanese supply convoy attacking Lae, shooting down the transport aircraft and their escorts in a running battle that lasted 40 minutes. 10 Japanese aircraft destroyed, no American losses. They swept across the Bismarck Sea, where P-38s working with B-25 bombers devastated a Japanese convoy attempting to reinforce New Guinea. In the Battle of the Bismarck Sea from March 2 to 4, 1943, American aircraft, with P-38s providing fighter escort and sweeping Japanese air cover, sank 8 Japanese transports and 4 destroyers, killing over 3,000 Japanese soldiers. The Lightning pilots claimed 16 Japanese fighters destroyed during the 3-day battle. From the Japanese perspective, the P-38 represented a fundamental shift in the tactical balance. Japanese fighter pilots, flying Zeros with exceptional maneuverability but limited high-altitude performance and no armor protection, found themselves unable to catch the American twin-engine fighters. When P-38s dived to attack, they came at speeds exceeding 400 miles per hour, faster than a Zero's maximum level speed. When attacked, P-38 pilots simply pushed their throttles forward and outran pursuit.
The German Luftwaffe, facing P-38s in North Africa and Europe, had coined the nickname Fork-tailed Devil, der Gabelschwanz Teufel, for the Lightning's distinctive appearance and deadly effectiveness. Japanese pilots adopted similar terms. Some called it 2 planes, 1 pilot, ni hikoki, hitori hikoshi. Others used more fearful descriptions. The aircraft that couldn't be caught, couldn't be outclimbed, and brought overwhelming firepower to every engagement. Between November 1942 and April 1943, P-38 squadrons in the Pacific destroyed over 150 Japanese aircraft confirmed, with approximately 75 additional probables. The Lightning's loss rate during this period remained remarkably low, fewer than 20 aircraft lost to enemy action, many of those due to mechanical issues rather than combat damage. The advantage depended entirely on proper tactics. P-38 pilots who tried to turn fight with Zeros usually died. The Japanese fighter could complete 3 full horizontal turns in the time it took a Lightning to complete 1. But Lightning pilots who maintained speed discipline, who kept altitude advantage, who used their twin-engine power and superior roll rate for hit-and-run attacks consistently dominated engagements. The aircraft's concentrated nose armament proved devastatingly effective. While fighters with wing-mounted guns had to account for convergence, the point where the bullet streams from left and right wings intersected, the P-38's weapons all fired parallel from the nose. At 300 yards, a 2-second burst from a Lightning's 4 50-caliber machine guns and 20mm cannon delivered approximately 40 pounds of projectiles directly into the target. Against lightly built Japanese aircraft with no armor or self-sealing fuel tanks, this firepower was catastrophic. By mid-April 1943, the P-38 Lightning had established clear air superiority over the Solomon Islands. Japanese commanders knew their bomber formations needed heavy fighter escorts whenever Lightnings were operating. Japanese pilots filed reports describing the twin-boomed American fighter with a mixture of professional respect and personal dread. But the Lightning's greatest mission still lay ahead.
On April 14, 1943, when Commander Leighton placed Yamamoto's decoded itinerary on Admiral Nimitz's desk, the aircraft's unique combination of range, speed, and firepower was about to be tested in the most precisely targeted assassination mission in aviation history. Admiral Nimitz sent the proposal up the chain of command. On April 17, 1943, President Franklin D. Roosevelt personally approved Operation Vengeance. The mission was classified top secret and marked urgent. Planning fell to Major John W. Mitchell, commanding officer of the 339th Fighter Squadron. Mitchell, a methodical and experienced pilot, faced a navigational challenge that bordered on impossible. The mission required flying 435 miles from Fighter Strip 2 on Guadalcanal to Empress Augusta Bay near Bougainville, maintaining radio silence, flying at wave-top height to avoid Japanese radar, arriving precisely at 0935, the moment when Yamamoto's transport would be approaching Balale Airfield, and doing all this over featureless ocean where any navigational error would cause the mission to fail completely. Mitchell spent 2 days calculating courses, times, and fuel consumption. The P-38Gs would fly at 200 miles per hour indicated airspeed at an altitude between 10 and 50 feet above the ocean, low enough that Japanese radar installations couldn't detect them. At this altitude and speed, with 2 300-gallon drop tanks plus internal fuel, the Lightnings would have approximately 30 minutes over the target area before needing to turn for home. The navigation calculation was brutally precise. Guadalcanal to the interception point, 435 statute miles on a course of 290 degrees. Flight time, 2 hours and 10 minutes at cruise power. Assuming Yamamoto departed Rabaul at 6 a.m. as scheduled, and assuming his transport flew at the Betty bomber's standard cruising speed of 180 miles per hour, the interception window would open at 0935. Mitchell would lead 16 P-38s. 12 aircraft would fly as navigational cover, maintaining course and staying low. 4 aircraft, Captain Thomas Lanfield, Lieutenant Rex Barber, Lieutenant Besby Holmes, and Lieutenant Raymond Hine, would comprise the killer flight. When the bombers were spotted, the killer flight would climb to attack, while Mitchell's section engage any Zero escorts. The pilots received their briefing on April 17th. Mitchell made the mission parameters clear. They would fly the entire outbound leg at 50 feet or lower. Radio silence would be absolute until contact with the enemy. Navigation would depend entirely on Mitchell's calculations. No landmarks, no radio beacons, just compass, airspeed, and time. If they didn't find Yamamoto at the predicted interception point, they would search for 30 minutes maximum, then return home before fuel became critical. At 0725 on April 18, 1943, 18 P-38 Lightnings lifted off from Fighter Strip 2 on Guadalcanal. 2 aircraft experienced mechanical problems and returned to base. The remaining 16, led by Major Mitchell, turned northwest and dropped to wave-top height. For 2 hours and 8 minutes, the P-38s flew 50 feet above the Pacific Ocean. The pilots maintained strict radio silence. Mitchell navigated by compass, airspeed indicator, and stopwatch. The Lightnings crossed featureless ocean, flying in loose formation, their propellers sometimes throwing spray from wave tops. At 0933 hours, 2 minutes ahead of Mitchell's predicted interception time, the P-38s approached Empress Augusta Bay. Bougainville's jungle-covered mountains appeared on the horizon. Mitchell pulled the formation up to 1,000 feet to scan for the target. At 0934, Lieutenant Doug Tanning broke radio silence. "Bogies, 11 o'clock, high." 2 Betty bombers with 6 Zero escorts flying in formation at 4,500 feet, approaching Balale Airfield exactly on schedule. Mitchell's voice crackled over the radio. "All right, Tom, go get 'em. He's your meat. The 4 killer flight P-38s, Lanphier, Barber, Holmes, and Hine jettisoned their drop tanks and started climbing toward the bombers. The 12 remaining Lightnings jettisoned tanks and turned to meet the Zero escorts diving to intercept. The battle that followed lasted less than 4 minutes. Lanphier and Barber, flying as a 2-plane element, climbed toward the Betty bombers. The Japanese formation saw them coming and broke. The lead Betty, later confirmed to be carrying Admiral Yamamoto, turned toward shore and dove toward the jungle canopy. The second Betty, carrying Vice Admiral Motome Yugaki and other staff officers, turned east toward the sea. 3 Zeros dove on Lanphier, forcing him to break off his attack and engage defensively. Barber continued pursuing the lead Betty alone. The Japanese bomber was diving at full speed, perhaps 300 miles per hour, heading for the jungle where the pursuing fighter might lose visual contact. Barber, close to 300 yards, dropped slightly below the Betty's tail level and opened fire. His 4.50 caliber machine guns and 20mm cannon poured rounds into the bomber's right engine and wing root. Smoke erupted from the engine. The Betty staggered, rolled slightly left, then its right wing dipped, and the bomber plunged into the jungle canopy. The time was approximately 09:38. Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto, commander of the combined fleet, architect of Pearl Harbor, the man who had predicted Japan could not win a prolonged war against American industrial might, died as his transport aircraft crashed into the jungle of Bougainville. The crash site would be found the following day. Yamamoto's body was located in the wreckage, still strapped in his seat. Medical examination revealed 2 .50 bullet wounds, one through the left shoulder, one through the lower jaw, both inflicted before the crash. He had died instantly from the wounds, not from the impact. The second Betty, carrying Admiral Ugaki, met a similar fate. Lieutenant Besby Holmes, having dispatched his Zero opponent, pursued the second bomber out over the water. Holmes opened fire at close range, hitting the Betty's engines and fuselage. The bomber crashed into the sea. Admiral Ugaki survived the crash, swimming to shore with injuries. He would be the only senior officer to survive the mission. The P-38s broke off at approximately 09:42 and turned for home. Major Mitchell's formation, now down to 15 aircraft, Lieutenant Hine had been forced to return due to engine trouble early in the mission, flew back to Guadalcanal at low altitude, maintaining radio silence. They landed at Fighter Strip 2 at approximately 12:30 hours, having been airborne for 5 hours. Debriefing confirmed 2 Betty bombers destroyed, 3 Zeros definitely destroyed, 2 additional Zeros probably destroyed. 1 P-38 was lost, Lieutenant Raymond Hine shot down during the initial engagement with Zero escorts. It was only later, after Japanese radio intercepts were decoded, that American intelligence confirmed what they had suspected. One of the destroyed Betty bombers had been carrying Admiral Yamamoto. The most precisely executed assassination in aviation history had succeeded. The Lockheed P-38 Lightning's revolutionary design began in 1937 when the U.S. Army Air Corps issued a specification for a high-altitude interceptor. The requirements were extraordinary. Maximum speed of at least 360 miles per hour at 20,000 feet. Climb to 20,000 feet in 6 minutes. Range of at least 1,000 miles. These specifications were, in 1937, almost impossible to achieve with existing technology. A single-engine fighter with the necessary power would require an enormous engine, likely the new experimental engines producing 1,000 horsepower or more. But engines that powerful were heavy, and the associated fuel capacity would make the aircraft too heavy to achieve the required climb rate. Chief Engineer Hull Hibbard and project designer Clarence Kelly Johnson faced the problem at Lockheed's Burbank facility. Johnson, only 27 years old, proposed a radical solution: twin engines. Two Allison V1710 engines, each producing 1,150 horsepower, would provide the power needed. But mounting two engines on a conventional fuselage created problems with asymmetric thrust if one engine failed, and with propeller rotation. Counter-rotating propellers required complex gearing. Johnson's design solved these problems through revolutionary configuration. The two engines would be mounted in separate booms, extending back from the wings, with the propellers turning in opposite directions, one clockwise, one counterclockwise. This eliminated asymmetric thrust problems. The propellers would spin outward, the left engine's propeller rotating counterclockwise, the right clockwise, eliminating torque issues. The pilot would sit in a central nacelle between the booms, with all armament in the nose, eliminating convergence problems. The design offered extraordinary advantages. The twin-boom configuration created exceptional stability and control response. The counter-rotating propellers eliminated torque effects that made single-engine fighters difficult to handle at high power settings. The engine placement gave excellent pilot visibility. No long engine nacelle obstructing forward view. The nose armament provided devastating concentrated firepower. And the twin engines offered redundancy. Lose one engine and the pilot could still fly home. But the design also imposed weight penalties. The twin-boom structure required more airframe weight than a conventional fuselage. The complex landing gear, one main gear retracting into each engine nacelle, added mechanical complexity. The long propeller extension shafts between engines and propellers added weight and created potential maintenance issues. The prototype XP-38 first flew on January 27, 1939. It immediately demonstrated exceptional performance. On February 11, 1939, Lieutenant Benjamin Kelsey flew the XP-38 from California to New York in 7 hours and 2 minutes, a transcontinental record that demonstrated the aircraft's speed and range capabilities. The prototype crashed on landing at Mitchell Field due to pilot error after running out of fuel, but the flight had proven the concept. Production P-38s entered service in 1941. Early variants suffered from compressibility problems in high-speed dives. The airflow over the wing's center section reached transonic speeds at terminal velocity, causing loss of control effectiveness. Lockheed solved this with dive flaps on later models. Engine cooling problems in tropical climates required improved intercoolers and revised cooling louvers. The P-38G variant, entering production in mid-1942, incorporated most of these fixes and added strengthened pylons for 300-gallon drop tanks. This was the version that equipped the 339th Fighter Squadron at Guadalcanal. The P-38G had maximum speed of 400 miles per hour at 25,000 feet, service ceiling of 44,000 feet, and with external tanks, range exceeding 2,000 miles. The Lightning's design philosophy reflected American industrial and strategic thinking. Build aircraft with redundancy, range, and firepower, accepting weight penalties in exchange for capability and survivability. This contrasted sharply with Japanese design philosophy, which prioritized maneuverability and performance by minimizing weight, often at the expense of pilot protection, fuel tank protection, and structural strength. The mathematics were brutally simple. The Mitsubishi A6M0 weighed 5,313 pounds fully loaded and could outturn any Allied fighter. But it had no armor protection, no self-sealing fuel tanks, and its magnesium alloy structure burned intensely when hit. The P-38 weighed 17,500 pounds fully loaded, over 3 times the Zero's weight. But it had 2 engines, self-sealing fuel tanks, armor protection for the pilot, and could absorb battle damage that would destroy lighter fighters. The Zero could turn inside a P-38's turning circle, But the P-38 could outrun, outclimb, outdive, and, most importantly, outrange the Zero.
And in the vast distances of the Pacific Theater, range meant control. The side that could fly farther could choose when and where to fight. The side with better range could reach targets beyond enemy fighter protection. And the side with sufficient range could conduct missions that seemed impossible, like flying 435 miles to intercept a specific aircraft at a predicted time. For Operation Vengeance, the P-38's design philosophy proved perfect. No other American fighter and no Japanese fighter could have executed the mission. The Lightning's twin engines provided the reliability needed for extended overwater flight. Its range enabled reaching Bougainville from Guadalcanal. Its speed ensured successful interception despite the tight timing window. And its firepower guaranteed destruction of the target. The fork-tailed Devil had been designed, intentionally or not, for exactly this type of mission. The death of Admiral Yamamoto devastated Japanese naval command. On April 19, 1943, Japanese search parties found the wreckage of the Betty bomber in Bougainville's jungle, approximately 1 mile from the coast. Yamamoto's body was discovered still strapped in his seat, killed by .50 caliber rounds before the crash. His death was announced publicly on May 21, 1943, after nearly a month of secrecy while the Japanese government and military debated how to handle the loss. The psychological impact rippled through Japanese forces. Yamamoto had been Japan's most capable naval strategist, the planner of Pearl Harbor, the architect of Japan's early Pacific War victories. He had commanded respect not only from his own forces, but from his American opponents. His loss created a vacuum in Japanese naval leadership that would never be adequately filled. Vice Admiral Minenichi Koga assumed command of the combined fleet on May 3, 1943. But Koga lacked Yamamoto's strategic vision and understanding of American capabilities. Later commanders, Admiral Soemu Toyota after Koga's death in 1944, similarly proved unable to match Yamamoto's effectiveness. Historians universally agree that Japan's naval operations after April 1943 showed less strategic coherence and tactical sophistication than operations conducted under Yamamoto's command. The P-38 Lightning continued its dominance in the Pacific Theater throughout 1943 and 1944. The aircraft's combination of range, speed, and firepower made it the preferred fighter for long-range escort missions, ground attack operations, and air superiority sweeps. On June 16, 1943, P-38s from the 339th Fighter Squadron intercepted a large Japanese formation attacking Allied shipping near Guadalcanal. 16 Lightnings destroyed 12 Betty bombers and 7 Zero escorts, losing 2 P-38s. On July 25, P-38s flying from New Guinea shot down 18 Japanese aircraft during the Battle of the Bismarck Sea. On September 2nd, Lightnings destroyed 14 Japanese fighters over Wewak. The Lightning became the mount of America's most successful fighter aces. Major Richard Ira Bong, flying P-38s with the 49th Fighter Group, achieved 40 confirmed aerial victories, America's all-time highest-scoring ace. All 40 victories were achieved in P-38 Lightnings between December 1942 and December 1944, when Bong was ordered home for public relations duties. Major Thomas B. Maguire, Jr., flying with the 475th Fighter Group, scored 38 confirmed victories, all but 2 in P-38s, becoming America's second highest-scoring ace. Maguire was killed on January 7, 1945, when his P-38 stalled during a low-altitude dogfight over the Philippines. Both Bong and Maguire received the Medal of Honor. Other P-38 aces accumulated impressive scores. Colonel Charles H. McDonald, 27 victories in P-38s. Major Gerald Johnson, 22 victories. Captain Richard H. West, 20 victories. The Lightning produced more American aces in the Pacific Theater than any other fighter type. The aircraft's effectiveness stemmed from its tactical versatility. P-38s conducted long-range bomber escort missions, protecting B-17s and B-24s on raids deep into Japanese-held territory. The Lightning's range allowed it to accompany bombers to targets beyond the reach of shorter-ranged fighters, providing protection that dramatically reduced bomber losses. P-38s also excelled at ground attack. The aircraft could carry 4,000 pounds of bombs or 10 5-inch rockets under the wings, delivering devastating firepower against Japanese shipping, airfields, and ground installations. The concentrated nose armament proved highly effective for strafing. The 4.50 caliber machine guns and 20mm cannon could destroy trucks, barges, light fortifications, and aircraft on the ground with short, accurate bursts.
During the Battle of the Philippine Sea in June 1944, P-38s flying from land bases in the Marianas helped achieve what American pilots called the Great Marianas Turkey Shoot, destroying over 300 Japanese aircraft in a single day. During the Battle of Leyte Gulf in October 1944, land-based P-38s provided air cover for American naval forces, shooting down dozens of Japanese aircraft attempting to attack the fleet. The Lightning's effectiveness extended beyond aerial combat. On November 2, 1943, P-38s intercepted and destroyed a convoy of Japanese destroyers attempting to evacuate personnel from Bougainville. The aerial attack sank or damaged all 5 destroyers, killing over 900 Japanese soldiers and sailors. On December 15, 1943, P-38s attacking Rabaul Harbor destroyed 11 Japanese cargo vessels and 2 destroyers in a single raid. The fork-tailed devil that Japanese pilots feared proved equally deadly against surface targets. P-38s sank more Japanese shipping tonnage in strafing and bombing attacks than any other Allied fighter in the Pacific. The Lightning's stability as a gun platform, thanks to its twin-boom design and counter-rotating propellers, made it exceptionally accurate for both air-to-air and air-to-ground gunnery. By late 1944, the P-38 was operating across the entire Pacific theater. Lightnings flew from bases in New Guinea, the Philippines, the Marianas, and the Ryukyu Islands, conducting missions that ranged from Truk to Formosa to the Japanese home islands. The aircraft's range enabled strategic flexibility that shorter-ranged fighters couldn't match. But Operation Vengeance remained the Lightning's most significant single mission. Killing Yamamoto hadn't just eliminated one commander, it had removed Japan's most capable strategic mind at a critical moment in the war. The psychological impact on Japanese morale, the disruption to naval command continuity, and the demonstration of American intelligence and operational reach all contributed to strategic effects far exceeding typical combat operations. The mission also demonstrated the P-38's unique capabilities. No other Allied fighter could have executed Operation Vengeance. The Lightning's twin-engine reliability enabled extended over-water flight. Its range reached the target. Its speed ensured interception. And its firepower destroyed the objective. The fork-tailed devil had proved perfect for the Pacific War's demands: range to reach distant targets, reliability to survive over hostile waters, and lethality to destroy whatever it found. Lockheed produced 10,037 P-38 Lightnings between 1941 and 1945, across multiple variants. The aircraft served in every theater of World War II, from the Aleutians to North Africa, from Europe to the Pacific. The P-38E, first combat-capable variant, featured 4 50 caliber machine guns and 1 20mm cannon in the nose, replacing earlier variants' mixed armament of 50 caliber and 30 caliber guns. 210 P-30Es were built. The P-30F added improved engines and provisions for external fuel tanks. 527 P-30Fs entered service. The P-30G variant, used in Operation Vengeance, incorporated strengthened wing pylons for 300-gallon drop tanks and improved intercoolers for better engine cooling in tropical climates. 1,082 P-30Gs were produced between September 1942 and June 1943. The P-30H featured improved engines producing 1,425 horsepower and provisions for 2,000 pounds of bombs. 600 P-30Hs were built. The P-30J, most produced variant, introduced enlarged intercoolers, solving high-altitude engine cooling problems, and hydraulically boosted ailerons, improving roll rate. 2,970 P-30Js entered service. The P-30L, final production variant, added improved engines, dive recovery flaps, and strengthened pylons for rockets. 3,923 P-30Ls were produced, with 113 converted to F-5G photo reconnaissance configuration. In Pacific combat, P-38s achieved an air-to-air kill ratio estimated at 2.5 to 1 or better. Approximately 2.5 Japanese aircraft destroyed for every Lightning lost in air combat. The aircraft's loss rate to mechanical failure remained relatively low despite the challenging tropical environment, testament to the reliability of its twin Allison engines and robust airframe. American P-38 pilots in the Pacific theater claimed over 1,800 confirmed aerial victories, though exact numbers vary by source. The Lightning destroyed more Japanese aircraft than any other Allied fighter type in the Pacific, including the more numerous P-40, F-4U Corsair, and P-37 Thunderbolt. Crew casualty statistics reflect the P-30's survivability. While exact figures remain difficult to compile due to incomplete records, post-war analysis indicated P-38 pilots had significantly better survival rates than pilots of single-engine fighters.
The twin-engine configuration meant engine damage that would have been fatal in a single-engine fighter often allowed Lightning pilots to reach friendly territory or ditch near rescue forces. First Lieutenant Rex Barber, who fired the shots that killed Admiral Yamamoto, survived the war and returned home with 5 confirmed aerial victories. He died in 2001 at age 84. Captain Thomas Lanphier, who disputed credit for the Yamamoto kill for decades, also survived the war with 6 confirmed victories. He died in 1987 at age 71. The controversy over kill credit, whether Lanphier or Barber actually shot down Yamamoto's bomber, continued until both men's deaths, never definitively resolved, to both parties' satisfaction. Major John Mitchell, who planned and led Operation Vengeance, survived the war and retired as a colonel. He consistently credited Barber with the Yamamoto kill, but never publicly disparaged Lanphier. Mitchell died in 1995 at age 79. The contrast with Japanese aircraft design philosophy proved stark. The Mitsubishi A6M0, Japan's premier fighter, weighed 5,313 pounds fully loaded. No armor protection for the pilot. No self-sealing fuel tanks. Magnesium alloy structure that burned intensely when hit. Maximum range of approximately 1,200 miles with external tank, but lacking the redundancy that allowed damaged P-38s to return home. The P-38 weighed 17,500 pounds fully loaded, over 3 times the Zero's weight. But it included armor protection behind the pilot and beneath the cockpit, self-sealing fuel tanks in the wing center section and engine nacelles, redundant hydraulic systems, and twin-engine reliability. When hit by enemy fire that would destroy a Zero, P-38s often flew home, sometimes on one engine. American design philosophy accepted weight penalties in exchange for pilot survivability and combat capability. Japanese design philosophy prioritized performance by minimizing weight, often at the expense of protection. The philosophical difference produced measurable results. American pilots, shot down, bailed out, were rescued and returned to combat.
Japanese pilots shot down usually died, either from the shoot-down itself or from lack of effective rescue operations. By war's end, the P-38 Lightning had proven itself one of the most versatile and effective fighters of World War II. The aircraft served as air superiority fighter, long-range escort, ground attack platform, and reconnaissance aircraft. In the Pacific theater specifically, the Lightning's unique combination of range, reliability, and firepower made it the ideal weapon for the vast oceanic distances and long-range operations that defined the campaign. Production statistics tell the story of American industrial might. 10,037 P-38s built in 4 years, with peak production reaching over 400 aircraft per month in 1944. By comparison, Japan produced approximately 10,000 Zeros across the entire war. Roughly equal total numbers, but Japan lacked the industrial capacity to simultaneously produce the bombers, transports, trainers, and support aircraft that American factories delivered in overwhelming numbers. The fork-tailed Devil's combat record in the Pacific theater demonstrated the aircraft's effectiveness across every mission type. Air superiority, over 1,800 confirmed kills. Bomber escort, dramatically reduced loss rates for B-17 and B-24 formations flying beyond the range of shorter-legged fighters. Ground attack, thousands of tons of bombs and rockets delivered against Japanese shipping, airfields, and installations. Reconnaissance, F-4 and F-5 photo reconnaissance variants provided critical intelligence across the Pacific. But the mission that defined the P-38's legacy remained Operation Vengeance. On April 18, 1943, 18 P-38G Lightnings had lifted off from Guadalcanal, flown 435 miles over open ocean at wave-top height, intercepted Admiral Yamamoto's transport within minutes of predicted time, shot down both bombers, and returned home, having executed the most precisely targeted assassination in military aviation history. No other aircraft in any air force could have accomplished that mission. The Lightning's design, twin engines for reliability, extended range for deep strikes, concentrated firepower for lethality, had proven perfect for the task. April 14, 1943, Pacific Fleet Headquarters, Pearl Harbor. Commander Edwin Layton had placed a decoded message on Admiral Nimitz's desk, and Nimitz asked, "What do you say? Do we try and get him?" 4 days later, Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto died in the jungle of Bougainville, killed by 50 caliber rounds from a P-38's nose guns. The aircraft Japanese pilots called the Fork-tailed Devil had executed its finest mission. Yamamoto had predicted Japan's failure in a prolonged war with the United States. He had told Japanese leaders he could run wild for 6 to 12 months, but had no expectation of success if the war continued. On April 18, 1943, exactly 1 year after the Doolittle raid demonstrated America could strike Japan itself, Yamamoto's prediction came true in the most personal way imaginable. American codebreakers had read his itinerary. American industry had built fighters with the range to reach him. American pilots, flying aircraft Japanese airmen feared, had intercepted him with precision that seemed impossible. The technology and intelligence capabilities Yamamoto had warned about, the advantages he knew Japan couldn't match, had combined to kill him. The body was cremated and transported to Tokyo aboard the battleship Musashi, Yamamoto's former flagship. Japan held a state funeral on June 5, 1943. The emperor posthumously awarded Yamamoto the title of Marshal Admiral and the Order of the Chrysanthemum. But no honors could replace the strategic mind Japan had lost. Future commanders of the combined fleet never achieved Yamamoto's effectiveness. Vice Admiral Koga's tenure saw steady American advances across the Pacific. Admiral Toyota presided over the catastrophic defeats at the Philippine Sea and Leyte Gulf. The continuity of strategic planning and operational excellence that Yamamoto had provided collapsed after his death. Japan's naval operations from May 1943 onward showed less sophistication and poorer strategic judgment than operations conducted under Yamamoto's command. The P-38 Lightning continued its devastating effectiveness throughout 1944 and into 1945. Major Richard Bong achieved all 40 of his victories in P-38s. Major Thomas Maguire scored 38 kills in Lightnings. The fork-tailed Devil destroyed more Japanese aircraft than any Allied fighter in the Pacific, protected bomber formations across vast distances, and delivered thousands of tons of ordnance against Japanese targets from New Guinea to the Philippines to the Ryukyus. But Operation Vengeance remained the Lightning's defining moment. The mission demonstrated principles that remain fundamental to modern warfare. Signals intelligence superiority provides actionable targeting information. Technological advantages enable operations beyond enemy response capabilities. Tactical precision transforms strategic opportunities into operational success. And eliminating irreplaceable enemy leaders creates effects far exceeding typical combat operations. The examination of Operation Vengeance reveals a deeper truth about the Pacific War. Japan began the conflict with certain tactical advantages: pilot experience, aircraft carriers, superior torpedoes, exceptional fighter maneuverability. But Japan lacked the industrial capacity to sustain prolonged warfare, the intelligence apparatus to protect operational security, and the design philosophy that prioritized pilot survivability over performance optimization. The P-38 brought different advantages to the Pacific War: industrial production that overwhelmed Japanese manufacturing capacity, cryptographic intelligence that read enemy communications, technological innovation that produced aircraft like the P-38 with capabilities Japanese fighters couldn't match, and a design philosophy that accepted weight penalties in exchange for crew protection and mission reliability. The P-38 Lightning embodied American military philosophy: build weapons with redundancy, range, and firepower. Accept higher initial costs in exchange for superior capability and survivability. Prioritize bringing trained personnel home alive to fight again. This contrasted sharply with Japanese philosophy: minimize weight to maximize performance. Prioritize mission success over crew survival. Accept higher casualty rates as necessary for tactical effectiveness. By April 1945, the results were undeniable. American fighter pilots shot down, bailed out, were rescued, and returned to combat, sometimes achieving dozens of aerial victories over multiple years. Japanese pilots shot down usually died, eliminating their experience from Japan's diminishing pool of trained aviators. American factories produced over 300,000 military aircraft during World War II. Japan produced approximately 76,000. The industrial and philosophical advantages proved decisive. Operation Vengeance encapsulated this disparity in a single mission. American codebreakers read Japanese communications. American engineers designed fighters with capabilities Japanese aircraft couldn't match. American pilots executed a mission requiring precision navigation, perfect timing, and overwhelming firepower. And the target, Admiral Yamamoto, the man who best understood America's advantages, died because he could not prevent the very technological and intelligence superiority he had warned about. The P-38 Lightning that killed Yamamoto was not a miracle weapon. It was simply a well-designed aircraft built by a nation with the industrial capacity, technological sophistication, and strategic resources to produce excellent weapons in overwhelming numbers. The Lightning's twin engines provided reliability. Its extended range enabled deep strikes. Its concentrated firepower destroyed targets. These capabilities, combined with superior intelligence and tactical execution, eliminated Japan's most capable naval strategist at a critical moment in the Pacific War. The fork-tailed devil had earned its name through effectiveness, not mystique. Japanese pilots feared the P-38 because it could outrun them, outclimb them, reach targets beyond their protective range, and bring devastating firepower to every engagement. German pilots feared it for the same reasons. The Lightning destroyed over 1,800 Japanese aircraft in the Pacific Theater and hundreds more German aircraft in Europe and North Africa. But on April 18, 1943, the Lightning achieved something beyond aerial combat statistics. It executed a mission so precisely timed, so perfectly planned, and so strategically consequential that it demonstrated the fundamental imbalance between American and Japanese capabilities. The aircraft that Japanese pilots called the fork-tailed devil had killed the one Japanese leader who truly understood why Japan couldn't win a prolonged war with America. Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto had been right. Japan could run wild for 6 to 12 months, but when the war continued, Japan had no expectation of success against American industrial might, technological innovation, and intelligence superiority. On the one-year anniversary of the Doolittle raid, those American advantages combined to prove Yamamoto's prediction in the most definitive way possible, by killing him with the very weapons and intelligence capabilities he had feared most. The P-38 Lightning, the fork-tailed devil, remains a symbol of American air power in the Pacific War. But Operation Vengeance transformed it into something more. Proof that superior intelligence, technological advantage, and tactical precision can eliminate irreplaceable enemy leaders and reshape entire campaigns. The mission demonstrated that warfare is decided not just by courage or tactical skill, by industrial capacity, intelligence superiority, and design philosophy that prioritizes bringing trained personnel home alive. In the jungle of Bougainville, Admiral Yamamoto died with 2.50 caliber bullet wounds, killed before his aircraft crashed. The bullets came from a P-38's nose guns, fired by a pilot who had navigated 435 miles over open ocean to arrive within minutes of predicted interception time. That single fact, that the mission succeeded with such precision, told the entire story of why Japan lost the Pacific War. The fork-tailed devil had delivered its judgment.